My wife's affair had the perfect alibi, painting classes that didn't exist. I never imagined my wife was capable of cheating until I caught her. When I got married, I didn't see any signs. We never think that way about our partners, do we? We trust them blindly, believing in the vows we took, in the promises we made to each other. Marriage is supposed to be a safe haven, a partnership built on honesty and loyalty. At least, that's what I thought when I stood at the altar 10 years ago. She always told me where she was going. We had a solid relationship built on mutual respect and honesty, or so I thought. I trusted her completely, never questioning her whereabouts or her intentions. We met at an amateur volleyball league 7 years ago. It was one of those casual Wednesday night games where people came to have fun and get some exercise after work. She had a competitive spirit that I found attractive, always diving for balls and encouraging her teammates. I noticed her immediately, not just because she was beautiful, but because of her energy and enthusiasm. She was working as a restaurant manager at a popular downtown establishment called the Riverside Grill, and I was a pipe fitter for a commercial plumbing company. Our jobs couldn't have been more different, but we connected on a level that transcended our professional lives. We dated for 3 years before getting married, and during that entire time, she was consistent, reliable, and always exactly where she said she would be. There were never any red flags, never any moments of doubt or suspicion. Her friends loved me, my friends loved her. Our families got along wonderfully. Everything seemed perfect, like we were building towards something meaningful and lasting. We had been married for 10 years when everything fell apart. 4 years ago, I bought us a house in a decent neighborhood on the east side of town, nothing fancy, but it was ours. It was a 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a decent-sized backyard and a 2-car garage. We were building a life together, or at least I thought we were. We talked about maybe having kids someday, though we weren't in any rush. We took annual vacations together, usually driving trips to national parks or coastal towns. We had a routine, a comfortable life that I valued. 9 months ago, she told me she wanted to start taking painting classes at a local art studio. The classes were scheduled for Monday and Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 8:30. I was supportive of the idea because I thought it was great that she wanted to try something new, to explore her creative side. She had mentioned before that she wished she had more hobbies outside of work. I encouraged her to pursue this, thinking it would bring her joy and fulfillment. I even told her I was proud of her for taking the initiative to learn something new. She went all in with the preparation. She bought all the materials she would need: oil paints in every color imaginable, acrylic paints, watercolor sets, brushes of various sizes from fine detail brushes to wide foam brushes, multiple canvases in different sizes, a portable easel, palette knives, mixing trays, and even a special carrying case designed specifically for art supplies. She must have spent $300 or $400 on everything. The first few weeks, she would come home and show me her work. They were simple pieces, mostly still-life compositions of fruit bowls and flowers, basic color mixing exercises where she practiced creating different shades and tones. Basic stuff, but I was genuinely proud of her for trying. I would praise her efforts, telling her how talented she was becoming, how I could see improvement already. Then she stopped showing me her paintings. She said she was working on a bigger project and wanted to surprise me with the finished piece when it was complete. I thought that was sweet and romantic, so I didn't push her to show me anything. I respected her creative process and her desire to keep it private until she was ready to share. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was, how easily I accepted her explanations without any skepticism. Soon after that, she added Saturday classes to her schedule. She explained that the instructor was offering additional workshops for more advanced students, and she wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to improve her skills faster. The Saturday sessions were supposedly longer, running from 2 in the afternoon until 7 in the evening. I had no reason to doubt her explanation. It all seemed perfectly reasonable and innocent. She was passionate about learning, or so I believed. She started receiving phone calls from her instructor discussing the class schedule, techniques they would be learning, and materials she needed to purchase for upcoming lessons. These calls came at odd times, though. Sunday mornings when we would typically sleep in together, late evenings around 10 or 11 when we were supposed to be winding down for bed, even during her lunch breaks at work. She would explain that the instructor was very dedicated to his craft and to his students, often working irregular hours to accommodate everyone's schedules and answer questions whenever students needed help. The conversations would last 30 to 40 minutes each time, and she would always go into another room to take them. Usually she'd go into our spare bedroom or out onto the back patio, saying she needed to concentrate on the technical details he was explaining and didn't want any distractions from the television or whatever I was doing. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I figured she was just being considerate, not wanting to disturb me with her art talk. That's when I started noticing details that didn't quite add up. There was never any paint under her fingernails, even though she claimed to be spending hours each week working with oils and acrylics. Anyone who's ever painted knows that paint gets everywhere, under your nails, on your hands, on your clothes. But she always came home completely clean, not a speck of paint on her. Her expensive materials weren't being used up at the rate they should have been. The paint tubes looked barely touched, the brushes were always immaculately clean and dry, and the canvases she had purchased remained stacked in their original packaging in our spare room, the plastic wrapping still intact on most of them. For someone supposedly painting for 6 to 9 hours every week, there should have been visible evidence of her artistic endeavors. There should have been sketches lying around, partially completed works in progress, paint-stained rags, the smell of turpentine or linseed oil on her clothes. But there was nothing. The art supplies sat unused, gathering dust in the corner of the spare room, like props in a stage play. A month ago, I decided to surprise her. I thought I would drive to the studio around the time her class was ending and take her out for a late dinner, maybe grab some dessert at her favorite cafe downtown. It was a Wednesday evening, and I finished work a bit early. I looked up the address she had given me for the art studio on Maple Street and drove there around 8:15. When I arrived at the location, there was no art studio. Instead, there was a vacant office space with a large for lease sign in the window. The building had been empty for months based on the dust accumulated on the windowsills and the faded condition of the rental sign. There were old papers scattered on the floor inside, visible through the dirty windows. The place was clearly abandoned. I sat in my truck outside that empty building for 20 minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind was racing, trying to find some innocent explanation. Maybe she had given me the wrong address by mistake. Maybe the studio had recently moved locations, and she forgot to tell me about the change. Maybe I had written down the address incorrectly. But deep down, I knew the truth was much worse than a simple mistake or miscommunication. That evening, she came home at her usual time, around 9:30, full of energy and excitement. She told me all about what a wonderful lesson they'd had that night, how the instructor had taught them a new technique for creating texture in their paintings using palette knives and thick application of paint, how she was really starting to feel like she was improving and finding her artistic voice. She went into elaborate detail about the specific colors she had mixed, the subject matter they had worked on, even describing conversations she'd supposedly had with other students in the class. She was lying about everything, and she was doing it so naturally, so convincingly. There were no painting classes. There was no instructor. There was no art studio on Maple Street. She was somewhere else every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday evening. 10 years of marriage, and she could look me in the eyes and fabricate an entire alternate reality for months without any hesitation or guilt showing on her face. I didn't confront her that night. I needed to know more. I needed to understand the full extent of what was happening before I made any decisions about how to handle this situation. So I started paying closer attention to everything, her behavior, her patterns, her inconsistencies. She was having an affair and using the painting classes as her cover story. She thought she was being clever with this creative excuse, this elaborate fabrication. The art classes were the perfect alibi. They explained away her absences 3 times a week, justified the need for privacy during those mysterious phone calls, and even gave her an excuse to appear happy and fulfilled when she came home. But she had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated my attention to detail and my ability to notice when things didn't make sense. Now, I was going to find out what she was really doing during those supposed art classes. I began tracking her schedule meticulously, writing down every detail in a small notebook I kept hidden in my truck. She would leave the house at 6:15 in the evening, supposedly to get to class early, and set up her workspace before the lesson officially began at 6:30. She was supposed to be back home by 9:30 after class ended at 8:30, and she cleaned up her materials and chatted with fellow students. But her return time was constantly changing and getting later. Some nights it was 9:45, other nights it was 10:15, and sometimes she wouldn't walk through the door until almost 11 o'clock at night. When I would ask about the late arrivals, she always had a ready explanation, never hesitating or stumbling over her words. The instructor had gone over the planned lesson time because everyone was so engaged with the particular technique they were learning. A few students had stayed after to discuss various approaches to composition and color theory. She had stopped to grab coffee with some of her classmates at a nearby cafe to continue discussing their artistic journey. Every excuse was plausible, delivered with confidence and specific details that made it sound authentic. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. I started checking the mileage on her car, something I'd never thought to do before. The distance to the supposed studio location on Maple Street was 12 miles from our house, which meant a round trip should be 24 to 25 miles at most, maybe 27 if she took a less direct route or made a quick stop somewhere. But after her classes, the odometer was showing she had driven 60 miles or more. The numbers didn't lie, even if she did. When I questioned this discrepancy as casually as I could, trying not to sound suspicious or accusatory, she told me they had driven as a group to an art supply store across town to look at different materials and compare prices on canvases and specialty paints. Or that she had taken a scenic route through the countryside to clear her head and think about her painting, using the drive as a kind of moving meditation. Or that she'd stopped by the grocery store on the way home and accidentally took the long way. Always an explanation, always delivered smoothly. I started taking photos of the odometer reading with my phone before she left for class and immediately after she returned. I'd wait until she was in the shower or already asleep. Then I'd slip out to the garage and document the mileage. Monday night, 58 miles. Wednesday night, 62 miles. Saturday afternoon and evening, 71 miles. The pattern was consistent and damning. She definitely wasn't driving to any painting class 12 miles away. The numbers proved she was going somewhere much farther, somewhere she didn't want me to know about. The following Monday, I decided to follow her. I left work early, telling my supervisor I had a family emergency to attend to and needed to take the rest of the afternoon off. I parked my truck a block away from our house, positioned where I could see our driveway, but where my vehicle wouldn't be immediately noticeable to her when she left. At exactly 6:15, just like clockwork, I watched her pull out of our driveway in her silver sedan. But instead of turning left toward downtown where the supposed art studio was located, she headed in the opposite direction and got onto the highway heading northeast out of the city. My stomach dropped as I realized she wasn't even going in the general direction she had told me about for 9 months. Everything was a lie, every single detail. I followed her for about 20 minutes, keeping several car lengths behind so she wouldn't notice me in her rearview mirror. I stayed in different lanes, let other cars get between us, all the basic surveillance techniques you see in movies. She exited the highway and drove into a newer development I had never been to before, an area where expensive homes had been built in the last 5 years. The houses here were massive, easily worth twice what our house was worth, maybe more. Perfectly manicured lawns, 3-car garages, elaborate landscaping with professional lighting, circular driveways with fountain features. She pulled into the driveway of a particularly impressive 2-story colonial with white columns and black shutters, a 3-car garage, and professionally landscaped yard that probably cost more to maintain each month than our mortgage payment. The house had to be worth at least $700,000 or $800,000, maybe more. A man came out to her car before she could even turn off the engine, like he'd been watching for her arrival. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, fit and muscular, looked like he spent serious time at the gym working on his physique. The kind of guy who wore expensive workout clothes even when he wasn't exercising, designer athletic, where that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He had the build of someone who did bodybuilding or CrossFit religiously, with broad shoulders and defined arms visible even from a distance. He opened her car door for her like they had done this routine 100 times before, a gesture of familiarity and intimacy. They embraced right there in the driveway, and it wasn't a friendly hug between acquaintances. It was intimate, familiar, the kind of embrace shared by lovers who haven't seen each other in too long, not casual acquaintances or art class friends. His arms wrapped around her waist, her hands went up around his neck, their bodies pressed together. I could see them talking and laughing, completely comfortable with each other. Then they walked into the house together, his arms still around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder in a gesture of affection and trust. I took photos of the house number and the street sign with trembling hands. My hands were shaking as I held my phone, but I forced myself to document everything. I took pictures of her car in his driveway, pictures of the house from multiple angles, pictures of the street sign and house number. Evidence. I needed evidence of what I was witnessing. Then I drove back home and waited, my mind spinning with questions and anger. I sat in our living room in the dark, not turning on any lights, just sitting there processing what I had witnessed. I thought about confronting her immediately when she came home, demanding answers, but something stopped me. I needed more information. I needed to understand the full scope of this betrayal before deciding how to proceed. She came home at 10:20 that night, almost 4 hours after she had left. She walked in cheerful and relaxed, her face glowing with happiness, immediately launching into a detailed story about what an amazing class they'd had that evening. She talked about the still life they had worked on, a complicated arrangement of wine bottles and fruit. She even had a few drops of paint strategically placed on the back of her hands and on her sleeve, added for authenticity, I'm sure, probably applied in a parking lot somewhere before driving home. The level of planning and deception that went into her lies was almost impressive in its thoroughness. She had thought of every detail, prepared for every question I might ask. The paint on her hands was the perfect touch, physical evidence to support her fabricated story. She was playing a role, performing a character, and doing it flawlessly. I couldn't stop thinking about it over the next several days. 9 months of lies. 9 months of her living a double life, while I remained completely oblivious to the truth. She had made me feel like something was wrong with me when our intimate life had essentially disappeared over the past 6 months. She would say she was too tired from work, too stressed from managing the restaurant, not in the mood, had a headache, wanted to just go to sleep. Our physical relationship had gone from several times a week to maybe once a month, if that. And all along, she was getting her needs met by someone else. Someone richer than me. Someone who could provide a lifestyle I could never afford on a pipe fitter's salary. Someone who lived in a house that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 years. How many times had she kissed me goodbye before going to meet him? How many times had she kissed me hello after being with him, after being intimate with him? The thought made me physically ill. I used public property records available online to find out who owned that house. The owner's last name was Richardson. First name Gregory. I found his social media profiles easily enough. He wasn't particularly private with his online presence. He was exactly the type of guy I figure my wife would be attracted to if she was looking to trade up from her current situation. His photos showed a life of luxury and leisure that was foreign to me. There were photos of him at expensive gyms with high-end equipment, on tropical vacations in places like Bali and the Maldives, posing with luxury cars, including a black BMW and silver Mercedes, pictures of him on boats and jet skis. Everything I wasn't and could never be on a pipe fitter's salary. She had chosen someone who represented an upgrade from her husband in every material way possible. Better looking, wealthier, more successful, living a lifestyle she clearly wanted but couldn't have with me. I started following her regularly after that initial discovery, about once a week, careful not to establish a pattern she might notice if she was paying attention. I varied which days I followed her, sometimes Monday, sometimes Wednesday, once on a Saturday. It was always the same routine, like a script they had perfected. Monday and Wednesday evenings, she went directly to his house. Saturday afternoons too, arriving around 2:30 and not leaving until after 7. Sometimes she would stop at a grocery store on the way home from his place, probably to have a legitimate receipt with a timestamp in case I ever questioned where she had been or what she had been doing. She was building an evidence trail of her own, creating proof of her cover story. She would buy small items, milk, bread, fruit, things that justified a shopping trip. She was playing house with him at his mansion, then coming home to play house with me in our modest ranch. Living 2 completely separate lives and managing to keep them from colliding for 9 months. At home, I kept up the appearance of normalcy, though it was killing me inside. I would ask her about her classes, compliment her on how relaxed and happy she seemed. She would absolutely glow when I brought it up, her face lighting up with genuine joy, so pleased with herself for pulling off this elaborate deception. The lies flowed from her mouth so naturally, so effortlessly, like she had rehearsed them 1,000 times. She would give me intricate details about techniques she was supposedly learning, about conversations with the instructor, about other students in the class, whose names I now knew were fictional. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was enjoying it. She liked having this secret life, this hidden world where she was someone different. She liked thinking she was smarter than me, that she had fooled me completely, and could continue fooling me indefinitely. There was a smugness about her sometimes, a barely concealed satisfaction with her own cleverness that I could now see clearly. I had made my decision. This was over. Not the investigation, but the marriage. There would be no couples therapy, no working through our problems, no second chances or attempts at reconciliation. She had made her choice when she decided to start this affair 9 months ago, when she looked at our marriage and decided it wasn't enough. Now I was going to make mine. I started researching divorce attorneys in our area, reading reviews, figuring out how to protect myself financially in the dissolution of our marriage. We didn't have kids, which would make things simpler and less complicated. No custody battles, no child support calculations, no worrying about how this would affect innocent children. But we had the house with both our names on the mortgage and deed, and joint bank accounts that would need to be divided. I needed to be smart about this, strategic in how I approached the end of our marriage. I wasn't going to confront her about what I knew, wasn't going to give her the opportunity to explain or make excuses or beg for forgiveness. That would be too easy for her, would give her too much control over the situation and the narrative. 9 months of lies and betrayal deserved something more impactful than a simple confrontation. She needed to feel the same shock and devastation I had felt when I discovered the truth. She needed to understand that actions have consequences. I opened a new bank account at a different bank across town and started transferring money into it bit by bit, amounts small enough that she wouldn't notice them missing from our joint account when she checked the balance online. $200 here, $300 there, never more than $500 at once. Over several weeks, I moved about $8,000 into my new private account. I started looking for apartments to rent, places I could afford on just my income. My plan was simple and devastating. I was going to disappear. She would come home from one of her classes with Richardson and find an empty house with a note explaining that I knew everything, that I had evidence, that I had filed for divorce. No warning, no discussion, no chance for her to spin the situation or manipulate me with tears and apologies. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life, an exercise in self-control and careful planning. I had to pretend everything was normal, kiss her goodbye in the mornings knowing she was going to lie to me about her evening plans. Watch her get ready for her classes, knowing she was actually getting ready to spend time with him, probably choosing her outfit based on what he liked. I had to bite my tongue and play the role of the oblivious husband while I prepared my exit strategy. I found an apartment about 15 minutes from where we lived, a one-bedroom place on the second floor of small complex. It was a furnished apartment, which was perfect because I wouldn't have to fight over furniture or buy everything new immediately. The place was available for immediate occupancy, and the landlord was willing to work with me on the move-in date. It wasn't much, probably 600 square feet total, but it would serve its purpose. It would be mine, a place where I didn't have to wonder if my wife was being faithful. I met with a divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving infidelity, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who had excellent reviews and a reputation for being thorough and aggressive when necessary. She told me I needed solid evidence if I wanted the best possible outcome in the divorce, especially regarding the division of assets. Photographic evidence of the affair would strengthen my position significantly. I couldn't afford to hire a private investigator on my salary. They charge $100 an hour or more, and I'd need multiple days of surveillance. So I took a few days off work, telling my boss I had some personal matters to handle, and did the surveillance myself. Over the course of several days, I collected photos and videos of my wife and Richardson together. They weren't being careful or discreet anymore, probably convinced that their secret was safe. I captured them kissing in his driveway before going inside, holding hands as they walked into his house, embracing through his front window, which faced the street. On one Saturday, I recorded video of them coming out to his backyard pool area, her wearing a bikini I'd never seen before, him in expensive swim trunks, looking every bit like a happy couple enjoying their weekend. Combined with all my odometer readings, my photos of the empty art studio, and the documented proof that no painting classes existed at the address she had given me, I had everything I needed for court. I got everything ready over the next 2 weeks. The new apartment was secured, first and last month's rent paid, utilities transferred into my name. The attorney was on retainer, ready to file papers as soon as I gave the word. The evidence was compiled and organized, safely stored in multiple locations including cloud storage and a USB drive I kept at work. My new bank account had enough money in it to support me for several months if necessary. All that was left was choosing the day to execute my plan. I decided on a Wednesday in mid-October, one of her class nights. She would be at Richardson's house until at least 10 o'clock that evening based on the pattern I had observed, which gave me approximately 4 hours to do what I needed to do. I had been planning this for weeks, thinking through every detail, every possible complication. I would take my clothes, important documents, family photos, my father's tools and memorabilia that meant something to me. I didn't want to strip the house bare or be vindictive about belongings. I just wanted to take what was mine and disappear quietly, leaving her to face the consequences alone. That morning, she kissed me goodbye like it was any other day, told me she loved me with apparent sincerity, reminded me she had class that evening, and would be home late. It was the last lie she would ever tell me as my wife. I called in sick to work one final time, and came home around noon. The hardest part was deciding what to take from 10 years of marriage, what mattered enough to bring with me into my new life. My tools and work equipment definitely, my clothes and personal items obviously, photos of my parents and grandparents that I couldn't replace, my father's fishing gear, and the pocket watch he had given me before he died. Books I had owned since college, a few pieces of furniture that had belonged to my family. Everything else could stay. The television we'd bought together, the dishes, the decorations, the bed we'd shared. None of it meant anything anymore. I wrote the note short and to the point, no dramatic speeches or emotional outbursts. I told her I knew about Richardson. I knew about the fake painting classes and the empty art studio. I had photos and videos documenting her affair. I had filed for divorce, and she would be served with papers shortly. The house would be dealt with at the court hearing, or she could just move in with her wealthy boyfriend since she clearly preferred his lifestyle. I signed it simply with my name, no love or any other sentiment. By 4 o'clock, everything I cared about was loaded in a rental truck I had picked up that morning. I walked through the house one last time, looking at the life we had built together. The furniture we had picked out when we first bought the place, the pictures on walls from vacations and family gatherings, the kitchen where we had cooked countless meals together, laughing and talking about our days. All of it meaningless now, tainted by her betrayal, and transformed into painful reminders of a marriage that had been dying while I remained ignorant. I left the note on the kitchen counter where she would see it immediately when she came home. I placed it right in the center, weighted down with her favorite coffee mug so it wouldn't blow away if she opened a window. Then I locked the door behind me, dropped my house key in the mailbox, and drove away in the rental truck. I didn't look back at the house or the neighborhood. There was nothing there for me anymore except memories I wanted to forget. At the new apartment, I started unpacking my things, setting up this new chapter of my life. The place was small and impersonal, but it felt clean somehow. No more lies, no more fake painting classes, no more checking odometers and wondering where she really was. No more doubting myself or questioning my own perceptions. Just peace and quiet and the truth, however painful it might be. At 11 o'clock that night, my phone started ringing. It was her. I looked at her name on the screen and declined the call, feeling a grim satisfaction at finally being the one in control. She called 8 more times over the next hour, each call going straight to voicemail. I deleted the voicemails without listening to them, having no interest in her excuses or explanations or tears. She had made her choice 9 months ago when she decided to start this affair with Richardson. Now she could live with the consequences of that choice. The next morning, my phone was full of text messages from her. Where was I? What was happening? Please come home so we could talk about this. She was begging me to give her a chance to explain, saying it wasn't what I thought, that she could fix this if I would just listen to her. I ignored every message, deleted them as they came in. My attorney had been very clear that I shouldn't communicate with her directly about anything related to the divorce. Everything needed to go through lawyers now to protect my interests. A week later, a mutual friend from the volleyball league called me, saying my wife had been asking about me, telling people that I had abandoned her without any explanation. She was playing the victim, crafting a narrative where she was the wrong party, the confused spouse whose husband inexplicably left her. She was telling people I had just disappeared one day without warning, leaving her confused and heartbroken, making me out to be the villain in this story. Let her tell whatever story she wanted to whoever would listen. The truth would come out soon enough when the divorce documents and evidence of her affair became part of the public court record. When her friends and family saw the photos of her with Richardson, when they learned about the 9 months of lies, they would understand who the real victim was in this situation. I heard through the grapevine that she moved in with Richardson pretty quickly after I left, within just a couple of weeks. So much for being heartbroken and devastated by my departure. She had probably been planning her exit strategy too, lining up her next living situation with him, just waiting for the right moment to leave me. I had just executed my plan first, caught her off guard before she could implement hers and control the narrative. She had wanted to have it both ways, the stability and respectability of marriage combined with the excitement and luxury of an affair with a wealthy man. But when she was forced to choose between us, when the double life became impossible to maintain, she chose the bigger house and the bigger bank account. She chose the man who could give her the lifestyle she wanted instead of the man she had promised to love for better or worse. The divorce took a year to finalize, but it could have taken much longer if she had decided to fight it and make things difficult. Once she saw all the evidence I had compiled, the photos of her with Richardson at his house, the videos of them together, the odometer records proving she wasn't going where she claimed, the proof that the painting studio never existed at the address she had given me, she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. Infidelity is still infidelity, regardless of the circumstances or excuses, and the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Her attorney probably advised her to settle quickly and quietly rather than drag out and make things worse. I kept my pension and most of my savings that I had managed to protect by moving money before she knew I was leaving. We sold the house, and I got the larger share of the proceeds as part of the settlement, compensation for her breach of our marriage contract. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's still with Richardson, living in his mansion, probably enjoying the life she always wanted. I genuinely hope they're happy together, though I suspect they won't be in the long run. People who are willing to cheat and lie aren't exactly the most reliable partners. Eventually, she'll probably find that out the hard way when he gets bored or finds someone younger or wealthier. Maybe he's already cheating on her with someone else, continuing the cycle. Maybe she's already looking for her next upgrade, someone even richer or more successful than Richardson. Once a cheater, always a cheater, as they say. The patterns that lead someone to betray their spouse don't just disappear because they've moved on to a new relationship. As for me, I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually. I have my own place now, a small but comfortable apartment that's all mine. I have my own life, my own peace of mind, my own space where I don't have to wonder or worry or doubt. I don't have to wonder where my wife really is during her supposed painting classes anymore because I don't have a wife. That's exactly what I wanted: freedom from the lies, freedom from the uncertainty, freedom from loving someone who was betraying me. That's exactly what I wanted when I left. She thought she was so clever with her fake hobby and her elaborate cover story, so smart with all her carefully constructed lies and alibis. She thought she could fool me indefinitely, that I would never catch on to her deception because I was just a simple pipe fitter who didn't pay attention to details. But she underestimated the man she married, underestimated my intelligence and my ability to see through her performance. Nobody is as smart as they think they are, especially cheaters who get comfortable in their lies and start to believe their own deceptions. They get careless, overconfident, convinced that their victims are too stupid or too trusting to ever figure out the truth. She learned that lesson the hard way when she came home to an empty house and a note explaining that I had known for months. And I learned something valuable too. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic or designed to hurt the other person. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away with your dignity intact and letting someone else deal with their mess. Let Richardson deal with her lying, her cheating, her constant need for more. That's his problem now, not mine. The smartest thing I did throughout this entire ordeal was not taking her back when she inevitably begged for another chance, maintaining my self-control, and not letting my emotions dictate my actions in the heat of the moment. I could have confronted her, screamed at her, demanded explanations, engaged in dramatic scenes. But instead, I simply planned my exit strategy carefully and executed it perfectly, leaving her to face the consequences without giving her any opportunity to manipulate me. Control your emotions, protect your interests, and walk away with your dignity and self-respect intact. That's the lesson I learned from this entire nightmare. Don't let anger make you do something stupid. Don't let heartbreak make you weak. Don't let betrayal turn you into someone you're not. Just gather your evidence, make your plan, and execute it when the time is right. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.